Whoops, why does this stop?
So John, do you know Chunjiang? Hey John.
Yeah.
Do you know Chunjiang? We hired Chunjiang as a
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great news for him, and I think for you guys as well.
Yeah.
I think he'll be a great addition to the community there. He's very excited about it.
Yeah.
That's
so we
great
have a
news.
lot of
Takao is here. Let me promote him.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello, Takao. Welcome.
Hey, Takao.
Oh,
Good to see you.
Good
Hi,
evening.
good to see you. So,
Hey Takao.
hi. How are you?
Good, good.
Great,
Hey.
great. I'm glad that you could agree to give this seminar. Very much looking forward to hearing about your latest research.
Yeah. So, thank you very much for your kind invitation. I'm quite excited today. So, to discuss about the future of flexible, stretchable bioelectronics.
Takao,
Yeah, you and your group, you're always doing something very interesting in this area. So I can't wait to hear about the latest. So.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
And Takao, you have competition today. The Olympics. Competing for people's attention. But I'm sure people would be more.
Should we do the discussion now, or do you want to go through your slides first?
Yes. So let me try to check my presentation slide, and let me sorry. So can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
And some of my slide may contain the video.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah.
It doesn't contain any sounds. And
I remember in the video you were introducing yourself and the work. There was sound. Maybe you want to go there and let's double check
yes.
how it works.
I'm Takao Someya.
So this video only contains sounds. Otherwise there is no sound.
The sound works well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And thank you for sharing your slide in advance. We had the privilege to have a preview, and was very impressed and really looking forward yourself
Thank
to
you. So
really
I
go
slightly
into
modified but it's more or less the same. And okay, so that's it.
Wonderful. Okay.
Great.
So John, you want to start the
sure.
interview? Okay.
Sure. So Takao, I think you're maybe familiar with the format. We have kind of an informal discussion between now and the time that your lecture is officially scheduled to start in about 25 minutes.
Okay.
And it's just kind of an open Q&A, and I think gives sort of the audience a chance to hear a little bit about your background, your motivations, your career goals, anything that you'd like to share with people who are listening to this video or watching this video, or participating in the Zoom call. So So maybe I can just get started. I mean, I think I've known you for more than 20 years now. We overlapped at
So long.
Bell Laboratories. It feels like not that long ago, but yeah, it's 20 years, even more than that, I think, little by little bit. And you know, you're quite a unique individual. I mean, a very deep quantitative engineer and scientist, but you have an amazing kind of creative flair to your work and your style. It's very unusual, and I find it very delightful. So maybe you can you know, share a little bit about your background and how you got interested in science, and a little bit about your career trajectory, terminating in your position now as Dean of Engineering at University of Tokyo. You've risen up through the ranks in an amazing trajectory. So maybe just share a little bit of your background, a little bit of your biography. I think people will be very interested in hearing about that.
Okay, so maybe I can start describing my own career from my PhD work. So my PhD work was gallium arsenide-based quantum wires. So that's kind of nanostructures and confined one-dimensional extons. And my expertise was molecular beam epitaxy. And as perhaps you know, the Loren Pfeiffer at Bell Labs, and he invented the cleaved edge overgrowth to precisely controls the nanostructure of gallium arsenide-based materials. And my PhD supervisor, Professor Hiroyuki Sakaki, is kind of Mr. Nanotechnology in Japan, and he invented the compound semiconductor-based quantum dots and quantum wires. And I was quite excited to learn the frontier of semiconductors. But of course, the mainstream electronics rely on silicon, but the simultaneously compound semiconductor is also another important materials, which has the complementary performance. But in any cases, my background was molecular beam epitaxy 3,5 compound inorganic semiconductor, and more emphasis on fundamental research like 1D extons to evaluate the shape of wave functions confined in real nanostructures. And that was my PhD work. And then immediately after I get the PhD, I got the research associate position in the neighboring laboratory. So where my boss is also working on the nanostructures. But at that time, many of the junior faculty members requested to change their own research topics slightly differently from their own PhD work. So that was kind of a traditional way of Japanese academia, particularly in our school. But because I got the position in the neighboring laboratory, and that looks quite working on the identical research topics. So in that way, I didn't get the opportunity to change my own research at that time. And then I got the government scholarship to go abroad for 2 years. And at that time, I tried to slightly change my own research topics from inorganic semiconductor to something else. And at that time, I considered to work on the maybe DNA-based memory or organic semiconductor or molecular electronics. So there are many, you know, attractive topics. So as a frontier of nanotechnology. But I decided to work on the organic electronics. I began and then started working on the organic electronics. So that was a quick history of my research from PhD work to the jumping into the organic electronics.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So it takes a lot of courage, I think, and sort of a bold spirit to make such a radical change in your research directions. And was that what gave you the confidence that you could make such a change successfully? What was the mindset? Was it more sort of a requirement in terms of how the Japanese academic system works and you were forced to do this, or or you just a natural explorer and unafraid of getting into new fields in that way?
So there are a couple of reasons, but the as I mentioned, my former PhD supervisor is so big, and if I try to stay in the same research topic, so there is no way to avoid from his shadow. So in any cases, I want to do something different from my PhD supervisor. So this is the major reason why I stopped working on the compound semiconductor. But another reason is, so the although organic electronics started emerging at that time, so means the 2001, 1999 or 2000. So at that time, OLED was already commercialized, and it's passive metrics and quite primitive, but that is sufficient to show the promise of the future. And I found the organic electronics super exciting. And but beyond the organic light emitting diode, there was not so much work of organic electronics, particularly in the field of electronic engineering. So many of the researchers are synthetic chemists and also material scientists. And my background was WE with an emphasis of material and basic science, but I affiliated with the electrical engineering. And there are many talented engineers of high-level system integration or others. So I wanted to learn the frontier of organic electronics and try to get some advanced knowledge to Japan to work with the system of organic electronics. So that was overall my motivation to start working on the organic electronics.
Yeah, it was a very wise decision, and it sounds like you thought very deeply about the opportunity and its intersection with your core expertise. And so I believe you were at Bell Labs for about a year, and then you spent your second year in the US at Columbia University, maybe
right.
a little bit more deeply involved in molecular electronics, and then transitioned back to your faculty position, junior faculty position, I guess,
right.
at the University of Tokyo. And I was always been amazed at how quickly you sort of rose to the frontier of research in this area. Do you have any hints or lessons learned for how to get into a new field, not only be a contributor but rise to the forefront so quickly?
One of the important part of my past experiences was the high precision device fabrication. In some sense, as I mentioned, many researchers working in organic electronics were synthetic chemists and material scientists. So they usually use the drop casting to make the transistors and devices. So that's actually quite efficient way to examine the performance of new materials. However, the many engineers in the field of electronics, try to fabricate devices with more.
I don't know how I can mute this person, but then, okay, all right. I apologize for that.
No problem
I have no
at all.
idea what that was.
But in any cases, so I try to fabricate the devices in some sense, the traditional way of advanced nanofabrication. So so when I started learning on the organic electronics, so many organic devices were manufactured in just regular room, so not in the clean room, but the initial performance may be more or less the same. So the clean room doesn't enhance the performance. At least the initial performance might be the same. But when we try to make the integrated circuit of organic thin film transistors, so we definitely need the high uniformity and a high yield. And so that is rather important than achieving the world highest mobility. So, and that was one of my important part. So to deliver more, the uniformity and yield are important. So to move forward. So
yeah, I think that's been an important niche for you, and being able to build demonstrators at a system level to show how integration is possible. The other thing that's notable when I look at your record of accomplishment is very early on you appreciated and understood the importance of mechanics in these types of systems. I remember an early paper in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, you developed these mesh type architectures where you had in-plane scissoring kind of rotations that allow for stretching. And I know you've collaborated with Sigurd Wagner and maybe Zhigang as well. And as you know, the audience here has deep interest in mechanics. And so maybe you could make some comments on how mechanics has played an important role in your research.
So, well, as you know, the mainstream electronics is silicon. The smaller, the better. And we are trying to find some of the new performance index to make the frontier of electronics more attractive. And then I found the large area may be one of the new direction. And when we try to make the large area electronics on some substrate, the mechanical flexibility play a very important role. And then we try to find the new application that required the mechanical flexibility and the large area featured simultaneously, and then get the concept of electronic skin. And then naturally, we reach the concept of stretchable or integrated circuit. So because the robot skin or electronic skin required the mechanical, flexibility, stretchability inherently, and then going to the, our research moving further. So in that way, so I recognize how important to make the mechanically flexible electronics.
Yeah, it was very insightful. Anyway, thank you for those comments. I think we have about 9 minutes left. I don't want to totally dominate this conversation. We have other panelists here that may have questions for you, and I think Jimmy has a short slide deck that he'll walk through as well. I think that would probably only take 2 or 3 minutes, but maybe you'll open it up to the panelists. Do you have any questions for Takao about his background or his research or other topics?
Morning, hi Chao-Han. I have a related question. So, and you're the dean now. So how you balance, dean and the research Because I've been department chair, I found very struggle to keep my research going.
Well, that's a good question, and I try to stay scholarly active. Although my schedule was well, pretty much dominated by the administrative work, but still somehow due to a corona pandemic situation, so I'm not allowed traveling abroad, and there is no beer party, and so and then I can find a lot of time after maybe 6 p.m. every day, so and concentrate on maybe considering new direction of my research and editing the paper which was written by my group members. So that was not best way, but I could manage some time and to compromise everything. Hi, Sigurd. So,
Yeah.
Hi, Takao.
Yeah. Nancy, it looks like you have your hand up. Do you have a question for Takao?
Yes. Hello, Professor Someya. So I have a question about the future of soft electronics, including electronic skin and electronic tattoos and large area electronics. So what do you think are the most important unanswered questions or unmet needs in this field, and which approach do you think are promising to solving those challenges? Thank you.
that's also a difficult question to answer, to be honest. So, so many researchers in this field are proposing the many attractive application. So some of them, I believe many of them will become true in the end. But the big question is which application may come first. And so we need to continuously keep showing the promise of this research area. So and try to attract the more industry people and showing more promising application. And so in that sense, your question is which application will come fast and will be big and will be the killer application. But it is always difficult to, precisely predict the future roadmap. So that is the reason why the scientists and the engineers are competing their own ideas. I myself is quite interested in monitoring skin resistance right now, because the reliability and reproducibility is always important for sensing. So in that sense, my research focus in the detection of maybe skin resistance or electronic psychological physiological signal, because many of them can be detected with high precision and quite good reproducibility. But of course, the chemical sensing and other application will be very important. But I myself doesn't have any knowledge of chemistry. So, and then I try to stay the physical sensors.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very promising direction as well. So I'm kind of watching the time a little bit. If there aren't any burning questions now, we'll have plenty of time for discussion after Takao's presentation. I want to give Jimmy a chance to go through his slides. We have 4 minutes before the official start time. So if that makes sense, Jimmy, it's all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, John. I just have a few slides to go. This is the EML webinar, as you know. EML stands for Extreme Mechanics Letters, which seeks to publish research of immediacy, depth, and originality. So the team of EML is here. We have 3 editors-in-chief, also 5 editors, Katya Patoldi and Hanqing Jiang, Teng Li, Medicity, and Sulin Zhang. The publisher is Elsevier, Rebecca Capone. And just to show you some of the recent publications, Madden City published a perspective paper on physical intelligence as a new paradigm. Fascinating paper, and it talks about smart things without needing processing of the information, just physically smart. And this is the era of COVID-19. We actually had one of the EML webinars focused on COVID-19 or addressing the data-driven modeling of COVID-19 by Alan Kuhl of Stanford University. And we also have all kinds of different materials, such as material for soft actuators. This is published by Teng Li, one of our editors, and Liangbing Hu at Maryland. They were known to develop plant-based materials, very strong materials. And this is a paper addressing the issue of using those cellulose materials, nanofibers materials to develop or to make soft actuators. And there was also another cover article published by Ole Sigmund of Denmark on metamaterials with the title of Quasi-Periodic Mechanical Metamaterials with Extreme Isotropic Stiffness. That reminds me of, there was one time this so-called quasi-crystal was discovered, and that quasi-crystal paper took them 2 years to publish. Eventually, they won the Nobel Prize. Okay, so the EML webinar started last year. Zhigang, you want to present this?
Yeah. Started last year because of pandemic, and people quickly realized this international platform of meeting online probably will go beyond pandemic. This is what we are now. It has been influential, and thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Zhigang. And we're starting season 2 of EML webinar. We're introducing some new features in season 2. Interdisciplinarity is important. We're also introducing use WeChat live streaming for the EML webinars. And there are a huge number of viewers, generally speaking, through the live streaming. And these are the season 2 webinars. And Professor Takao Someya is the 5th speaker. We're also doing some experiment, especially social experiment. I'll let Teng to explain this.
Yeah, I would like to share the wonderful news today that we started a fundraising event for keep EML Webinar Season 2 going. And I'm proud to announce today that as of today, we have reached our fundraising goal of $3,000 to keep EML Webinar Season 2 going. And all the donors, their names are listed below. I would like to, on behalf of our EML Webinar team, and acknowledge their generous support. I won't be able to go over all the names, but we really thank these people for help us to keep the EML Webinar Season 2 going. Especially an anonymous donor who, our Secret Santa, who donated $1,000 in the last minute to completely seal the deal. And also we would like to thank all the friends of EML Webinar, including all the live audience, both in Zoom and the nearly 3,000 people in the live stream of WeChat. And thank you for your constant support to this webinar series.
I believe the donation side is still open, right?
It's still open.
Okay, so it's still time if you want to donate. And I also think that our webinar series is perhaps the only one, or at least one of the very first ones that can self-support itself. So thank you all very much for the donation. Let me stop here and stop sharing and turn it over to John.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jimmy. So I think we're ready to go. If you want to share your screen, Takao, I'll say a few words of introduction and then it'll be all yours. So, I've known Takao for more than 20 years now, and he's one of the most unique people that I've ever met in science and engineering. He's an extremely deep physical scientist, but he has an amazing level of creativity and flair to his research. It's really delightful, and you'll see that in his presentation. So Takao did his PhD work in 3.5 semiconductors at University of Tokyo. I came to know him during his time at Bell Laboratories Murray Hill facility. He spent about a year there learning all about organic electronics, then a subsequent year at Columbia University in molecular electronics, returned to University of Tokyo as assistant professor, and has rapidly risen through the ranks, established himself as a pioneer in this area, currently the Dean of Engineering at University of Tokyo. And so he's been remarkably successful, published a number of landmark papers in this area, was one of the earliest people in this field to understand the importance of mechanics in the design of these systems. And you'll see that as a prominent feature of his research as he goes through his presentation. So we're delighted to have you here, Takao. Thank you for agreeing to give a seminar in this webinar series. And so I'll just turn it over to you.
Okay, so thank you, John, for your kind introduction, and good morning or good evening. I'd like first thank the organizers for inviting me to special webinar series. It is my great pleasure to share with you the recent progress of organic-based large area electronics. Today's title is Electronic Skins for Biomedical Application. So this is the outline of my presentation. Today, I'm going to talk about the three research topics. The first one is stretchable electronics with an emphasis for the smart apparel application. And then going to talk about the ultra-thin electronics to achieve the conformability. And then moving to the breathable nanomesh electronics. So to improve the biocompatibility and quickly summarize my talk. So let me start describing the robotic electronic artificial skin, so that we made in 2003. So you may not familiar with the electronic skin, but that is truly animal-like stretchable large area sensing element that can detect the pressure and the temperature distribution simultaneously. So state-of-the-art robot may acquire the artificial eyes and artificial ears, but there are no practical sensors that can detect the 5 of senses beyond artificial ears or artificial eyes. So I try to overcome the common problem by making the mechanical flexibility of inherently soft organic materials. So this is the chip photo of first generation of flexible E-skin. So you can see the 16 by 16 access transistor matrix and the column selectors, low decoders, which rely on the organic thin film transistors, are manufactured on separate plastic foils and then assembled together to realize the readout circuitry. And then integration between pressure sensor and readout circuitry are performed by simply lamination approach. And do you know how many pain points are there on your skin? That's actually 2 million or even more. So this number is equivalent to the number of pixels used for the high definition liquid crystal displays. So 2 millions means 2,000 by 1,000. And currently state-of-the-art robot may acquire the individual tactile sensors on fingertip, assembling from the discrete devices and putting the individual cables. However, it is almost impossible to put the 2 millions of individual cables on discrete pressure sensors. So this is quite interesting technical problems from the viewpoint of electronic engineers. So how we can solve this problem. So we learned the development history of liquid crystal display, which begin with the 7 segment used for the calculator, going to the passive matrix and the active matrix, where one transistor is embedded in each cell. So in that way, we can reduce the number of required wires from 1 million to 1,000 plus 1,000 on the edge. And if I use the column selectors and low decoders, so number of wires can be further reduced down to 20 or something. So this is the magic of thin film transistor. So in that way, we establish the scalable circuit design to get the vast amount of sensors data reading out to the sensing metrics. So, and then we are dreaming this situation. So robots with sensitive skin may feel and even respond to a person's warmth while shaking hands, consequently letting people feel that robots are warmer. So do you know what I mean? So if we say, so robot, so that's kind of still object. People believe that is cold object. However, if such a cold steel object is entirely covered by our e-skin, people may start feeling robots are warmer, and that is going to change the relationship between people and the robot. So this is the concept of sensitive skin. And our development was featured by Time magazine as one of the best invention of the year and appeared part of the cover illustration. So since then, our research group are working on the e-skin and with establishing the high throughput manufacturing process. And we formed the kind of national government project with assembling the more than 30 companies in Japan and try to establish the high throughput all printed fabrication of organic thin film transistor based active metrics for large area sensors. So here the robot arms are moving the plastic foil supported by the glass substrate, and we can fabricate the organic transistor active metrics solely by using printing. And this movie shows how our devices work. It doesn't look like a flexible circuit, but that is manufactured on plastic foil. So if that is manufactured on glass, glass is surely fragile, and then that's kind of motion may cause the detrimental error of or device failure. And thanks to active metrics layout, so we can achieve the high definition of pressure distribution and a high data readout simultaneously. And similar to the animal skin, so we can detect the temperature distribution and the pressure distribution simultaneously. And of course, our devices is mechanically flexible, and that can wrap around the cylindrical bar and can monitor the temperature distribution and pressure distribution in this 3D geometry. So immediately after we developed the robotic skin, so we instantly recognize how important to introduce the stretchability to integrated circuit. So without stretchability, we cannot apply the robot skin onto movable part like joint of arms, or it is impossible to apply onto the robot face like three-dimensionally curved surface. And we try to make the integrated circuit by using the elastic substrate. And our approach was quite straightforward. So first we put the fairly rigid small island. So that are embedded on the rubber substrate, and then print the organic transistors on the individual rigid island. And finally, the source drain are connected by using the printed elastic conductors. So in that way, when we stretch our devices, so all the strain are accommodated with changing the length of elastic conductors. And in that way, we succeeded in developing the stretchable integrated circuit that's functional even after stretching over 145%. And today, Professor Sigurd Wagner joined this seminar as a panelist. And as many of you may know, the Professor Sigurd Wagner has developed the stretchable conductors together with the Dr. Stephanie Lacour. So the team has developed the gold-based wrinkling structure on PDMS, and then such a wrinkling structure allows them to introduce the stretchability to the highly conductive metal electrode. And our approach was somewhat different. So we begin with the elastomer itself, and but rubber is inherently insulating material, so we have to add some conducting material. So we choose the carbon nanotube or silver flake as conducting agent. And we mix the silver flake among the fluorinated copolymer with adding the surfactant and organic solvent. And finally, we succeeded in developing the printable elastic conductor. So our fabrication process is quite simple. So we print our material once and yield to the annealing process at 140 degrees Celsius. And such a simple fabrication process may allow us to achieve the high conductivity close to 1,000 Siemens per centimeter and a high stretchability over 400% simultaneously. So why we can make the such a highly conductive and highly stretchable elastic material? So although we add the silver flake with typical dimension of 2 to 3 micron, and we found the 8 nanometer silver nanoparticles are naturally formed and uniformly and densely dispersed among rubber matrix. So this is the kind of new discovery. So silver nanoparticles are naturally formed, although we didn't add the silver nanoparticles intentionally and simply starting from the silver flake with 2 to 3 micron. So this is the cross-section of TM image. The nanoparticle may get closer in achieving the efficient percolation conduction. That was the key to achieve the high conductivity and high stretchability simultaneously. So such a unique material can be printed on lava substrate, and to introduce the multiple electronic functions on lava substrate. And this lava sheet can be transferred onto the textile substrate simply by using hot lamination. And in that way, the surface of textile substrate can get the sensing function. So in that way, the stretchable electronics is creating the new field in the industrial field of apparel industry. So for example, so this photo shows the state of the art monitoring system of electromyogram. And the external cables are connected to the gel electrode. And so here is the external module that transmits data wirelessly. So this is the state of the art and still widely used. However, this is not always very convenient to monitor the athlete EMG because the cable can be easily detached during the exercise. Now, all the electronic element, sensors, cables, and other elements are embedded on the sportswear to make the sportswear smart. And even commercial smart sportswear can detect the ECG, EMG, body temperature, and motion, and start creating the new application in the field of sports and posture balance monitoring, and to quantitative evaluation of recovery of rehabilitation. So by using the elastic conductors, we have made the startup company in 2015 called Xenoma. And this sportswear may contain the 7 accelerometers. And by the combination of deep learning and data from the 7 accelerometer, so we can precisely evaluate the motion of people. So in other words, this is the smart wear-based motion capturing system. So typical motion capturing system require the multiple camera setting together with the marker on the clothes, but we don't need the multiple camera setting. And then people can feel free to go anywhere during the running of marathon, or maybe golf field is okay. And so this is the real-time image, and that's amazingly precise. And it's simply wear the clothes and start capturing people's motion in a second. And now the next video show how our device can be utilized the monitoring of top athlete motion. So she's the Miss Umehara of Taekwondo. So this is the motion capturing system, and from the AI analysis, so I'm sorry, some of the letters are written in Japanese, but the letters are not important. So you can see the athlete motion can be monitored remote. And this system was actually used for the training of top athlete in Corona pandemic, where the coach could find the difficulties to meet the Miss Umehara in person. And another example is rehabilitation. So person with spinal cord injury participated in rehabilitation session at the home with our prototype. And physical therapist can monitor the this motion remotely. And then try to send their feedback to trainee immediately after training session. This system was actually used again in a Corona situation. So such kind of remote technology are getting more and more important. So in that way, the elastic conductors creating the new opportunities for apparel industry. So although our team are developing the only stretchable conductors, but many of you may know the Professor Jenan Bao at Stanford University has developed the even stretchable semiconductors. So their stretchable semiconductor achieve the amazingly high performance of mobility over 1 square centimeters per second, simultaneously achieving the high stretchability over 100%. And in that way, they can improving the stretchability or mechanical durability of entire system. So now I'm going to move on to the second topic. So now the research field is moving from stretchable electronics to the conformable electronics. So you see, this is also quite famous development reported by Professor John Rogers. And Professor Rogers developed the epidermal electronics or electronic temporal tattoo. So where he reduced the silicon tip down to a few micron, and such a thin electronics is directly laminated on the surface of human skin. And in this development, the Professor Rogers and the team had reduced the substrate thickness starting from 500 micron, 136 and 5 micron. And the reduction of substrate thickness can improve the conformability of electronics. Now, such a ultra thin film can establish the quite good physical contact between electronics and human skin. Such a good physical contact can improve the signal quality when they monitor the electrophysiological signal like EMG or ECG. So this was strong motivation. So the thinner the better, and to achieve the good conformability. So this research triggered the extensive effort of scientists and engineers to introduce the electronic function on the surface of skin. So skin is ultimate place to introduce electronic functions non-invasively. So there are many electronic functions that has been already demonstrated by many research groups. So physical sensors, chemical sensors, that may include the monitoring of EMG, ECG, EEG, body temperature, and the skin modulus, hydration, and blood oxygen level, strain, sweat analysis of lactic acid and glucose. and other electronic functions has been already achieved. And as I begin with the introduction of organic thin film transistors, so our research group are trying to make the flexible stretchable devices by using the organic semiconductors. So this movie shows the world's thinnest and lightest organic thin film transistor integral circuit at the time, and it's lighter than feather. And when the Dr. Martin Kaltenbrunner, who was my former postdoc, throw away the ultra thin film devices from the 5th floor, and it's floating in the air. So such a ultra thin film was temporarily supported by the glass substrate and then delaminated from the substrate, thanks to an ultra thin film feature that may achieve the amazing conformability, and the crumpling doesn't cause any mechanical failure. And we use the commercially available PET or PEN film with a thickness of 1 micron. So that is commercially available and quite cheap. And then we laminated with pre-stretching rubber to transform the ultra flexible to be stretchable. So this is the how we can transform the ultra thin film to be stretchable. So after fabrication of devices on 1 micron thick substrate, so we prepare the pre-stretching rubber and laminate it together. And after relaxation of pre-stretching, the devices may form the wrinkling structure on the surface. So this is cross-section of SEM image. So this is the wavy form of 1 micron. And if you look at the wrinkling structure that exhibits the sharp bend of 10 micron, 18 micron, 20 micron, 15 micron. However, the minimum bending radius of organic thin film transistors manufactured of 1 micron was approximately 2 to 3 micron. The devices manufactured on such sharp bend area doesn't cause any mechanical failure. So this was a key to achieve the stretchable devices. Now you see how our device works. So this is the original position and start shrinking and coming back to the original position. So our methodology is widely applicable for different types of semiconductor devices or different types of semiconductors. Another example is world first stretchable OLED. So we manufactured the organic light emitting diode on 1 micron thick substrate and then laminated with the pre-stretching rubber to transform the ultra thin film to be stretchable. So this is quite simple method because the conventional microfabrication can be used for ultra thin film that's eventually supported by the glass. And after fabrication, we delaminated from supporting substrate and then laminate with the pre-stretching rubber. And then we are going to more advanced integration. So here we integrate the red pellet, green pellet with organic photo detectors on ultra thin film. So in that way, we succeeded in monitoring blood oxygen level very precisely. So because of the thin film feature, our device can establish the good physical contact on the surface of fingertip, and the slight motion of finger doesn't degrade the accuracy of blood oxygen level. And of course, the sensor attachment doesn't cause the any pains or discomfort of wearing. So we didn't invent any new sensing mechanism, but we tried to reduce the entire thickness down to a few microns. Thinner the better, to establish the a good physical contact on skin, and a nice conformability can eliminate the discomfort of sensor attachment. Simultaneously, the motion artifact can be minimized. So the previous devices are only single point detection, but now we develop the multi-point sensing, or in other words, that is conformable imaging system. So new system can realized by integrating organic photo detector and low temperature polysilicon. And total thickness is 15 micron. And we achieve the high spatial resolution over 500 DPI and high readout speed over 40 frame per second. The effective sensing area is approximately half inch by half inch. Now, when flexible images are put on the fingertip, we can monitor the fingerprint with high definition simultaneously with the dynamic data of pulse wave like this. And when the position is moving to the middle of fingers, we can detect the position of vein. So in this way, the same conformal imager is capable of imaging fingerprint and veins and monitoring and pulse waves simultaneously. Now, we want to show you one video of skin electronics.
I'm Takao Someya, a professor at the University of Tokyo. Our on-skin sensor utilizing nanomesh electrode is ultra-thin, lightweight, stretchable, and breathable. It is capable of monitoring health conditions simply by pasting it onto the skin. New sensor can be worn on the skin continuously for a week without causing any inflammatory issues. Our skin display is a 24 by 16 array of micro LEDs, and it exhibits simple graphic with motion because it is made from thin and soft materials. It can be freely deformed. The skin display also showed an electrocardiogram measured by using nanomesh electrodes. Combined with a wireless communication module, the acquired biometric data can be transferred to a medical cloud, and your home doctor can monitor your health conditions while you stay at home. In the future, we envision human-friendly skin electronics that will lead to improving the quality of human life.
So I hope that you like this video. So, but by the way, this video was received the highest honor of media award presented by the Minister of Communication 2 years ago. And we utilized the actual devices manufactured by our group, but clinicians were professional actor. And then I'm going to talk about the nanomesh electronics on hand. So that looks like a directly printed on skin, but I will tell you the fabrication process in detail in the next slide. So it firmly adheres to the shape of skin. It is ultra thin and lightweight, like the thickness is 70 micron, and there is no sense of fit. So this slide shows you the fabrication process. First, the nanomesh is made of polyvinyl alcohol, which is known as a water-soluble polymer. by electrospinning method. And the gold patterns are formed by vacuum evaporation through a shadow mask. And this device is put on the skin surface with adding some water. And PVA nanomesh is dissolved into water and washed away. And finally, gold nanomesh patterns remained on the surface. This means the PVA is used as temporal substrate. And finally, 70 nanometer thick gold layer can remain on the surface. And this is the nanomesh electrode put on this fingertip. So that looks like a gold thin film. But if I magnified this region by SEM, so that is porous structure allowed for skin to breathe. So this is magnified image near fingertip. This is the nanomesh region, gold nanomesh, and this is non-covered region. And dark spots are sweat pores. So if you look at the region near sweat pores, so we can observe the same amount of sweat coming out from the sweat pores. So this means the nanomesh attachment doesn't prevent the natural penetration of sweat or natural vaporization of sweat. So such a material permeabilities are quite important to improve the biocompatibility. Indeed, we put the nanomesh conductors on the forearm for a week, and together with the 1 micron thick polyethylene and 1 millimeter thick silicone. And after the continuous attachment for a week, the expert dermatologist can evaluate the doubtful inflammatory issues. And we found the nanomesh didn't show any inflammatory issues, while the silicone, polyethylene, both of them are known as a biocompatible material, yet that is not breathable, exhibit the fairly large risk of inflammatory issues. So we found the gas breathabilities are quite important to ensure the biocompatibility, particularly for the long-term sensor attachment. And then we put the nanomesh on the finger skin and monitor the resistance of nanomesh electrode and open and repeat cycles. And we found there was no significant degradation after 10,000 cycles of open and close motion. So nanomesh is quite mechanically durable. And then we put the nanomesh near people's chest. And here is the nanomesh. And this nanomesh is attached to the E-Very band containing the connectors, cables, and here is the external module that contains the high precision sensing element and the battery. And we can monitor the ECG waveform with a high precision. And data was transmitted to smartphone in real time. And nanomesh described in the previous slides were just single layer. However, we are going to make the more advanced structure. The first good example is all fiber-based mechano-acoustic sensor, which was published in PNS in the last year. So we are able to measure the subtle skin vibration continuously for 10 hours by attaching sensor on chest wall. So here you can see the all structure are made of nanomesh. So here is the overview of mechanoacoustic sensor that exhibit the world highest sensitivity among all mechanoacoustic sensors. And it's super thin, lightweight, and exhibits the gas permeability. So we form the mechanoacoustic sensor by laminating four different nanofiber layers. The bottom nanofiber electrode and the PVDF nanofiber and the top electrode. And the last one is the nanofiber-based encapsulation layer. So such a four multi-layered nanofibers can achieve the high sensitivity. And this is the data of heart monitoring immediately after the device attachment. And even after the 10 hours continuous monitoring. So there was no severe degradation. And our nanofiber is breathable, and there is no sense of feeling of sensor attachment. However, our device exhibits the quite comparable signal quality to existing medical grade sensors. And then I'm going to talk about the another nanomesh-based advanced sensor, which is ultra thin skin pressure sensor. So we are able to measure the contact pressure without affecting the skin sensation when fingertip may touch an object. So this is the overview of skin pressure sensors. That is also ultra thin of thickness of 12 micron. And there is no influence of the skin sensation, which will be proved later. And that exhibits the high sensitivity and simultaneously that achieve the excellent durability. So here you can see the cross section of our devices. We make the devices with laminating 4 nanofibers. The bottom electrode, that is the gold nanomesh, and polyurethane-based nanofiber insulating layer. And this is the top nanofiber electrode, and which is covered by the protection layer. So 4 layers of nanomesh can form the capacitive type pressure sensor. So when we apply the pressure, the spacing between 2 electrodes can get closer and to increase the capacitance. So this was a sensing mechanism. But highlight of this research is how we can prove the no effect on skin sensation by sensor attachment. So this was not so trivial issues, because even though we claim, so I don't feel anything, so people doesn't believe. So how we can provide the scientific evidence to show the no effect on skin sensation. But here was a collaboration at the Technical University of Munich. So there was a way to evaluate the effect on skin sensation. So when some material can put on the fingertip, so that may affect the skin sensation. In such a case, when the people try to move or lift up some weight, so minimum grip force needed to lift up the weight should increase due to a degradation of skin sensation. So in that way, we can evaluate the skin sensation. Indeed, when the 2 micron thick thin film may attached on the fingertip, the minimum grip pressure can increase in comparison with the bare skin. However, the nanomesh attachment doesn't change the minimum grip force at all. And it's almost identical between nanomesh attachment to bare skin. So in this way, we proved the no effect on skin sensation even when the nanomesh attachment. And our device exhibits the quite high sensitivity. So here is a very soft sponge with a weight of 0.16 gram. And when we pick the sponge ball up and release and pick up, release, pick up. And we succeeded in monitoring contact pressure when lifting the sponge, such a soft and lightweight sponge ball with a finger. And finally, I quickly describe the power solution to supply electricity to the on-skin electronics. So some of the wireless module required the electricity over maybe 10 milliwatt, for example. So there are many energy harvesting technology, but so far, none of the such a power solution can create the power over 10 milliwatt, except the organic photovoltaic cell. So for that reason, we are working on the ultra flexible or flexible organic photovoltaic cell. So we begin with the development of flexible OPV in 2012. So at that time, the efficiency manufactured on efficiency of OPV manufactured on 1 micron thick substrate was as small as 4%. But since then, we are working on these topics with improving the efficiency together with the improving the reliability. So in 2017, so we developed the waterproof organic photovoltaic cell with efficiency of 7.9%. And in 2018, we achieved the efficiency of 10%, and that's thermally stable. So here we show all the literature values of the power conversion efficiency as a thickness of substrate. So here you can see some general trend, but the efficiency of devices manufactured on rigid substrate exhibit always the best value. And when the substrate thickness is reduced, the fabrication is getting more and more difficult, and we have to suppress the process temperature, and also high energy process like plasma have to be minimized. And that is the reason why the achieving high efficiency on ultra thin film was so difficult. But we can quickly ramp up the efficiency starting from 4% to the 10%. And now our group can routinely manufacture the OPV with efficiency over 13%. So when we achieve the efficiency of 10%, so we can get the fairly large power, like 36 milliwatt for total active area of 4 square centimeters. And our device is thermally stable. Indeed, this is the material widely used for high efficiency of OPV. And this one is widely used. And when when we used the new material and with slightly changing the side chain, slightly modified the side chain, and that achieved the quite good stability after annealing high temperature. And this is the quite simple demo. So here is the steel iron, and apply the fairly high temperature. And so application of high temperature may be needed for hot melt. And then the device didn't show any degradation. So here is the more scientific data. So before and after application of high temperature, like 120 degrees Celsius for 30 seconds. So this is quite a typical temperature used for the hot melt in apparel industry. And then there is no degradation before and after application of thermal process. So here is the collaboration with one of the famous suits company, Aoki, in Japan. And we put the many OPV module on the backside of the jacket and show our demo at the exhibit. So I don't really know if you like this kind of design, or this could be fashionable or not, but in any cases, so we can obtain the fairly large power from the backside of the jacket. So we hope the further improvement of long-term stability may solve the power issues related to the skin electronics in the future. So before concluding my talk, I quickly summarize the pathway to the skin electronics. As I mentioned, the development history in our group may begin with the robotic skin. But robotic skin may need the stretchability, and we started working on the fabrication of integrated circuit on rubber substrate. And reduction of thickness can achieve the conformability of ultra-thin film electronics. And at that time, we slightly expand our target object from the robot to the human body and start monitoring the biosignal. And skin application require the breathability to achieve the biocompatibility. Now you see, our conclusion is very simple. So what is needed to achieve the continuous long-term health monitoring? So many of the biosignal may require direct attachment of sensing element on the body, and then ultra-thin, lightweight may be needed. So once that's is directly laminated on the human skin, we definitely need the stretchability. So otherwise the sensor causes the detachment. So this is the second requirement. And also we have to make the everything by using the non-toxic material. This is the third requirement. The last one is the gas permeability to avoid the inflammatory issues. Ultra thin lightweight and stretchability, non-toxic material, and breathability. So such 4 requirements have to be met to achieve the long-term health monitoring. So that can be met in 2013, and since then we started monitoring the many different types of biosignal continuously for long period of time. So before concluding my talk, I'd like to thank my collaborator. So this is my group photo, and Dr. Tomoyuki Yokota has made the many of the ultra-thin film devices. And conformable electronics has been developed by the team at Johann Kepler University, Dr. Martin Kaltenbrunner, and former Siegfried Bauer. And OPV was developed by my team at RIKEN, and the clinical evaluation were performed in collaboration with Keio University Hospital, led by Professor Amagai, who is a dermatologist. So in summary and conclusion, so today I talk about the frontier of wearable electronics. Now, the fascinating gadget of wristband and the glass are commercially available, but future we may easily buy the smart apparel or sensor patch for skin electronics. And those kind of new devices are quite attractive to improve the sensitivity or to reduce the invasiveness or discomfort of wearing. So we hope that the new electronics that harmonize between human and electronics can create the new opportunity in the field of healthcare, biomedical welfare, sports fitness, entertainment, and even more. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Takao. That was a wonderful presentation, a delightful collection of results. And so if you have time, we'll transition into a discussion period. We have a number of people who've been elevated to panelists, and I'm sure they have many questions for you. But maybe I can start with one. You focused your talk mainly on skin interfaces, but I know that you've done quite a bit of work on implantable devices, interfaces to the surface of the heart, maybe the lungs, other systems. What are your thoughts about opportunities for advanced classes of implantable devices that maybe build on some of the concepts that you've developed for skin interface systems? And maybe you could highlight some of the additional challenges and opportunities there.
Takao, can I ask you to stop sharing your slides so we can see more panelists? Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So thank you, John, for your important question regarding the implantable electronics. Indeed, our team has spent the huge amount of time for developing the organic semiconductor-based implantable devices. And the first implantable devices required the much more reliability, and that have to be used in wet condition. And so that is quite difficult. And of course, there are quite attractive feature for soft electronics in the field of implantable devices. However, to improve the reliability and long-term stability, so our strategy is to work with the industrial people, and then there was no Japanese company who showed the willingness to work on that topics. And then we are still pretty much interested in developing the implantable devices. However, currently we put the 100% of my resources on skin electronics to get the sufficient support from the Japanese industry. And once we solve the many of the critical issues related to the stability, and then we may come back to the field of implantable in the future.
Okay, great. Thank you. So it looks like we have a number of people with questions. So I'll just go through them one by one, maybe starting with Jimmy. Do you want to ask your question?
Wonderful talk, Takao. It's truly enjoyable. I'm interested in this pressure sensor. And, you know, the skin, when it sends pressure, not only the pressure, but also texture of the surface. I wonder whether your pressure sensor can also distinguish different textures of a surface. This is somewhat related to your experiments to make sure that the skin or the electronic skin doesn't really compromise the ability to for the skin to sense the forces itself. And you did the experiment by measuring the minimum force to lift the weight, to grab the object. In fact, when you did that, it requires the frictional coefficient to be evaluated. So you could potentially develop an electronic skin with the surface with higher frictional coefficient so that you require lower pressure to raise the object. It just happened that in your case, it's very consistent with the skin's intrinsic frictional coefficient.
So, yeah, okay, go ahead.
The texture is related to that. To sense the texture, you need pressure and the shear force. Can you comment on that?
So thank you very much for asking the important question regarding the detection of shear force in addition to the normal pressure. So we are pretty much interested in detecting both shear force and normal pressure, or differentiate shear force separately from the normal pressure. And indeed, there was several different ways to get the both information simultaneously, like optical approach, or maybe detection of capacitive approach. And we work on both, and some of them may works, but it's all single point detection. And it is not so trivial to achieve the multi-point sensing, as I introduced during my presentation. So, however, so answering to your question, the detection of shear force and the normal force may be possible even on the flexible device geometry, but multi-point sensing may be a big challenge in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe as a follow-up to that question, Takao, one of the unique features of your sensors, which you highlighted in your presentation, is the ability to measure pressure without significantly affecting the sensation of touch. But that sensation depends on multiple parameters. So there's a thermal component to that as well. And to my understanding, I'm not an expert, but the ridges on the surface of the finger help in your sensation of texture. And I guess your grasping experiment evaluated certain aspects of that sensation, but maybe not the full complement of effects, right, that lead to that perception of touch. And I wonder if you have plans for studying these other aspects and the influence of your device on these other modes of interaction that are important.
Yes, so as you mentioned, so we did the only grasping experiment, but there should be many other different evaluation methodology. But currently, we are not going to that direction, but we try to improve the mechanical durability. So one of the excited requests from the US professional baseball team is they want to monitor the grip pressure of top baseball player. Yeah, pitcher, yes. So, so that's quite exciting. And but obviously the nanomesh can be broken, and then we try to improve the mechanical durability. But and then skin is so sensitive, and once the durable nanomesh can be attached on the skin, so people start feeling or something can be put. So it is not so easy to compromise all the requirements. But now we succeeded in developing the extraordinary mechanically durable nanomesh, so that can monitor the grip pressure during the motion of pitcher. So and then we have to carefully examine so what kind of effect of sensation may be induced. So that will be the next challenge for us.
Indeed, actually, if you have a needle, you touch the needle, the sensation of the skin would actually translate to be avoiding that needle or sharp object. I wonder whether this type of sensation can be detected by your skin sensor.
Yes.
But it's an interesting device.
So this is quite exciting topics, because I'm simply, I'm just a device engineer, but the evaluation of human sensation needs the, completely different expertise, and there are quite interesting multidisciplinary field for collaboration.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Takao. So it looks like we have another like 10 or 11 questions. So,
so many.
Thank you in advance for your patience. The other thing is I haven't been watching the chronology of when the hands have gone up. So I'm not going to be able to get to people in order. So I'm just going to go according to the order of what I'm seeing on the screen here. So have some patience if you've had your hand up for a while. So next man up is Taher. You have a question for Takao?
Yes, I'll be short. Beautiful talk, very exciting. So we know that we talk about the fatigue when we talk about anything that is moving, deforming many times. In this case, there'll be a lot of stretches many times, large stretches. But we also know that when the skin regenerates over time, and I don't know the exact timing, how fast the skin cells regenerate to new cells, and then the previous layer flakes off. So now with these conformable devices or thin electronics, we are talking about fatigue of the device and the fatigue of the skin on which they're kind of in contact. So if we think of these kind of conformable devices for a longer time, maybe a week or maybe a few days, do you see how this is going to work? So assuming that the device has long fatigue life, even in millions and billions of cycles of stretch, but the surface on which it is coming in contact may have like a day or a couple of days of life, in the sense of a thin layer may flake off. How would this conformability work? or does it matter?
Well, the lifetime is always the, or reliability is always the major issues for this kind of on-skin electronics. And we have already succeeded in monitoring the ECG signal continuously for a week. And also we monitor the skin resistance more than 30 hours. So I believe this was sufficiently long for many practical application. And the nanomesh sensor is kind of cheap, and that should be used as disposable. And I try to establish the, I try to ensure the lifetime over 1 week, 1 day. In other words, that can, when the user go to the shower, and that can be washed away and try to put the fresh one. So I'm thinking such kind of using way of nanomesh, but 1 week may be okay, and but we don't need the lifetime beyond 1 week.
Okay, okay, very good, very cheap, very affordable. Okay, yeah, that I guess that's the main cost benefit analysis. So we don't have to worry about the skin flaking off over time. Thank you.
But important thing is we have to put the, even though we try to put the fresh nanomesh, so we are going to put the nanomesh exactly on the same place. So in that way, the nanomesh attachment shouldn't cause any interference on skin function.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Tahir. I'll share some of my own thoughts. We've been active in this area as well, and I think Takao has done these kinds of studies also. But in terms of the biology, it's about 2 weeks. So if you look at the different layers of the skin, the cells, at the base layer undergo a process of differentiation and migration to the surface of the skin, and that happens over, like I said, a time scale of about 2 weeks. So keratinocytes starting in the base layer end up in the stratum corneum. They dehydrate, they die, and then they exfoliate naturally. So as you pointed out, the skin is constantly regenerating itself, even in the absence of a wound, right? This is just the natural process of the skin. And so, I like to play around with these devices myself, and I think Takao's answer is a very important and practical one, which it probably doesn't matter in a sense, because 1 week is good enough and 2 weeks is biological time scale. And so, you kind of don't have to worry too much about it. But just out of curiosity, I've worn these devices for as many as 5 weeks just to see what happens, and what happens is basically at some point the device is sitting on a multi-layer of dead cells that aren't adhered to one another very effectively, and they're not certainly adhered to the underlying healthy skin, the living cells. And so it's a mechanically kind of unstable situation. Even if your device hasn't fatigued and your device adhesion hasn't degraded, the adhesion of the material that the device is sitting on has diminished significantly. And so the devices tend to just kind of fall off. That's the exfoliation process. I think that's the whole, evolutionary basis for how the skin operates, is to like shed, contamination and things that might be adhered to the surface of the skin, electronics being one example. But after 5 weeks, my device was still on basically, but it was clinging very precariously. So I pulled it off, and then when I moved my finger across the surface of the skin, you couldn't really see anything, but you move your finger across, and where the device was located, super rough, and it felt like really, really bad. And I was kind of concerned that maybe I wiped out my skin or something like that. But then I took a piece of Scotch tape and just applied it to that region, peeled it back, and there's like perfectly healthy skin underneath. It was just like a thick, dead stratum corneum layer, and it just came off. So anyway, that just some anecdotal information around your question. So,
No, John.
Yeah.
Okay, so please go ahead.
Go ahead, Takao.
Well, and also it strongly depends on the individuals. And some people may have very strong skin and there is no inflammatory issues after attachment of 1 week. And some people may have very weak, and some may have allergy. And so to confirm the biocompatibility or safety test, the number of subjects that we obtained for a primary test are only 20. So 20 is not sufficient number. So although initial test was quite promising, however, we have to increase the number of patients in the near future and then try to collect the more statistic data to ensure the safety of nanomesh electrodes in the near future.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, Takao. So in terms of wearing these devices for 5 weeks, don't try that at home to anybody. It's just for crazy people like me. So anyway, I was just interested to see how it worked out. Anyway, we'll go to the next question. Maybe Guy, you want to ask your question? You're an interface adhesion guy. Maybe good topic for you.
John, I used to think I was an interfaces and adhesion guy, but going 5 weeks without taking a shower is beyond anything I've ever done for science. So you are
no, it takes showers. No, that wasn't part of the study.
All right. Well, first, what a great way to start off the semester's EML lectures. Thank you so much for staying up late for a great lecture. I want to go back.
My pleasure.
So I want to go back to what Jimmy and John were talking about earlier, which is this idea of sort of ordered versus disordered sensors. So our skin has lots of disordered sensors and disordered ridges, and John was saying that's useful for sensing things like roughness. In general, how do you decide whether to put in ordered sensors or disordered sensors? What are the principles underlying that?
Sorry, what is the disorder and?
Yes, I mean spatial disorder. So like the sensors on our skin are typically pretty randomly distributed, whereas the sensors in our eyes though are very much ordered. And and there are advantages and disadvantages to both. Do you always put in ordered sensors, or are there certain cases in which disordered arrangements of sensors might be beneficial?
Maybe I'm sorry that I couldn't clearly catch the point of your question. So perhaps I do not know the order. Order means disorder.
I'm using terms of art that I shouldn't be using. The general term is that if you put things in a regular, a lot of your sensors are spaced out in very regular arrays.
Okay, I see. Well, from the viewpoint of semiconductor fabrication, so the periodic order might be the easiest to design, and but when the sensor is deformed, so now there is no way to precisely evaluate the position of an individual sensor. Do you know what I mean? So that can be addressed by column 10 and row 7, but there is no way to precisely, determine the position in XYZ axis. So this might be one of the problems. So we realize such kind of issue during the collaboration with robotics people, because we put the two-dimensional array of stretchable sensors on robot body, but it is now difficult to know where it is. But similar problem may occur for the human application in the future. Although currently people are talking about only single point detection.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it's an important issue because, as you point out, Takao, it's hard to know the detailed positionality after you've wrapped one of these stretchable arrays onto a curved surface. But even worse than that, it can change over time, right, as the underlying substrate deforms and moves. And so maybe there's a
Right.
way to integrate strain gauges and other things that would allow you to sort of track positionality, relative positionality of nodes across an array, but it's a challenging topic, I agree.
I think that will be one of the most important topics for the soft robotics, like so soft octopus robot may have an artificial skin and maybe artificial muscle and can move and touch something, but once that detects the some collision, so the soft robot doesn't know. So where is the position? So this could be a quite interesting, complicated problem. So in that way, we should definitely include the deep learning approach.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, Ting Li, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Thank you, John. Thanks, Takao, for your wonderful talk. It's a very impressive overview of the development of the electronic skin in your group, dating back from your early papers in early 2000 in PNAS until most recent results. What impressed me most was the one of the video you were showing the wireless gait monitoring of the human walking and around without touching to a lot of wires, and you see in for example in movie making production industry. So I can see quite some potential applications of this in the future. I think this is very exciting. And by the way, the live audience in our WeChat stream of your webinar is approaching 5,000 now. So, for example, for example, the medical patient monitoring, right? Like the elder people or other patients, and people tends to need to wear the, for example, electronic skin for a longer time. John mentioned that he wear the device for 5 weeks, and I can also see the potential application of this for the emerging concept of the metaverse, right? When imagine every one of us is wearing this kind of electronic sensoring in the future over a long time. So my question is actually on the power supply of this electronic skins, and or for example epidermal electronics or electronic tattoo, something like this. So if you wear this over a long time, what's your vision on the viable solution of the power supply to these devices? And we're very fortunate to have the top scientists in the stretchable electronics today, John Siegert and Beijing, Nanshu, and I would like to pick your minds on this question.
Oh, so thank you very much for your important question regarding power supply. So, which is always the critical bottlenecks for all the wearable technology. So, including skin electronics. But I believe the practical devices may comprise the hybrid solution. So which means the soft material and the rigid material, rigid battery, and so we have to assemble. We have to use many different types of elements and to make the system level integration. So in such a hybrid system, the critical part is, reliability of interconnection. Like when soft material can connect to the rigid element and the stretched such system, all the strain is accommodated at the interconnection, and then that may cause the device failure. So the big question is how we can improve the such kind of mechanical durability of entire system comprising both rigid and soft material. This is critically important. And of course, as a general trend, so we have to reduce the power consumption, and which is always the most important thing for all the wearables. And once we reduce the power consumption, we can use very small rechargeable battery, and the total volume can be reduced and the entire system can be smaller. So that is always important. However, the real issue is how we can establish the good mechanical durability of the entire system.
Yeah, just to follow up on that answer, Takao, I think this hybrid approach makes a lot of sense, as you pointed out. But then the engineering challenge is in the interface between, let's say, for example, your mesh type electrodes and flexible printed circuit board, even rigid. So like, how do you manage the mechanics of that interface? As kind of mechanics audience, do you taper the structures in thickness or width to sort of eliminate stress concentrations, or like how do you think about managing that interface between the skin-like super soft platform and the back end and that hybrid type of construction?
Yes. So currently, the most reliable interconnection used in our group is just a physical connection. Like even nanomesh can be used, so we still use the metal interconnection. We try to use the non-contact power transmission and the data transmission. How that may work in some sense, but that may cause the another issues, because the one's position is deviated from the optimized position, and then the reliability of data readout may be degraded, and the power coupling efficiency may be degraded. I would say currently the metal connection is not the best, but it's quite doable.
Okay, very, very good. I'm going to go a little bit out of order because Sigurd has been waiting patiently here, and he's been a long-time collaborator of yours, and he's an expert in some of these topics. So, yeah. Sigurd, you want to ask your question?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, John. Takao, I really enjoyed this overview. I have been away from stretchable electronics for quite some time because about 10 years ago, a new faculty member came in, Naveen Verma, and together with my old colleague, Jim Sturm, and I am a retired volunteer researcher currently, we are working on, we decided to work on complete systems demonstrations for large area electronics. That is, we go from material to complete systems, including signal processing, software, everything. So the poor students have to work for 5 years before they get the first publication out. The reason, so there are technical reasons for this, and we have, by the way, we have reached Wi-Fi frequencies now in thin film electronics, so 2.4 gigahertz is the standard Wi-Fi. But the reason why we did it, well, we are interested in it, but the practical reason is in our field, in electrical engineering, you basically have to demonstrate complete systems functions or nobody will listen to you. Mm-hmm. So this device research after device research after device research is fine. There are now, there are a huge number of people working, but that's not convincing to most companies, if I may say. Now, I know you answered that question in your talk in a way. You said you oriented your research towards a direction that you could find Japanese companies interested in. And then I remember John Rogers a few weeks ago, he gave a webinar, participated in one. He said, basically, we finance our own startups. That's another way of getting into it. And the question I have is, in it's not easy, but it's easier for us in completely inorganic world. I don't know, if you make a high frequency antenna, you don't need to do any bio. The question I ask you is, how do you see the move to engagement of manufacturing, of companies that pick it up? Now, what the most advanced groups have been doing, they demonstrate one potential application of another. It's like bait for the companies. But my experience has been the companies want to see more than bait. They want to see, they would like you to give them the recipe, they start manufacturing and selling. So Takao, what's your opinion on this? You have been at that interface for many years and working on it, so you must have lots of experience.
This is also quite important question, particularly for our team to survive. And currently, well, as I mentioned, our robotic skin work was motivated by the development of organic thin film transistors. And then our team are moving from TFT to the organic photonics, because organic semiconductors exhibit the superior performance in comparison with the other materials. And one of our latest collaboration with Japanese big company is flexible imaging system, as I mentioned. So we combined the organic photodetector with low temperature polysilicon that is originally developed for the flexible display with backplane. So this is quite advanced devices, and many of them are manufactured in quite controlled production line. And then we can make the high definition of 500 dpi and a high speed of 40 frame per second. And there is no defect, and that exhibits the amazing performance. So we succeeded in developing the flexible imaging system, but now we are critical situation. So what is the new application that becomes possible by the development of flexible imaging system? If we find the good application like the biometric information, simultaneous monitoring of biometric data and biosignal play an important role, and then the company can move the actual production in the future. However, if we cannot create the new application, so and then we have to think the completely different application. So big company may seeking the new application that can be used for the maybe wristband like Apple Watch. So it's quite tough, but we are hoping the flexible new organic based imaging system may detect the new biosignal, and then such kind of new devices may create new application in the future. Is that something, some answer to your question, or?
Yes, that's one of the answers. Yes, what you're trying to do is find a, this is not the right word, but find a shortcut to an application, right? Not too many clinical experiments, or none perhaps needed. You find a shortcut. That is a legitimate way of doing it. That is, you're making something that you're offering industry to see if they bite.
Yeah. So one of the severe problem for current wristband wearable is motion artifact. Of course, there are many ways to minimize the motion artifact. However, the current setup may use the single point detection, and once people move around, the detection point may move during the people's motion. If we increase the number of sensing area, so and then that should exhibit the durability or robustness for motion artifact. So in any cases, so such a large area sensing element requires the mechanical flexibility because the rigid one doesn't fit to the 3D human body. So I think such kind of elimination of motion artifact may be very important topics. So in the near future, I would say in a kind of short term. So once the industry people are convinced the benefit to use the stretchable flexible devices, so I think they start making the very big investment, but we have not yet succeeded in convincing the the mainstream electronics people so far.
Yeah, thank you. That is a very comprehensive answer to that question. It's one of them. I'm sure John has an answer too to that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I could share my own thoughts, but maybe first to pick up on something Takao said. I guess there were two examples you gave. One was in these conformal imagers, which I find to be fascinating, where you're building a technology in exploratory mode and then trying to look for application opportunities afterwards. And I think that's a very legitimate way to build an academic program. And then you also gave as an example the possibility for using stretchable electronics to eliminate motion artifacts where the application is pretty clear. There's a clear need for that. I was just wondering, across all of the different projects in your group, what is the balance? I mean, are you mainly doing exploratory things and then looking for applications later, or are you identifying industry needs, or maybe industry collaborators are approaching you with needs, and then you're trying to determine whether your materials and technologies could address those needs? I mean, there's kind of a spectrum there. I was just wondering how you assemble your portfolio of projects and what the balance is, just out of curiosity.
Well, I would say there is no strong control in our group in some sense. All of my group members are doing what they want to do, and so they can move freely. And well, I don't really know what they are doing right now. So this is a way of in my group. So, but we try to enhance the maybe synergetic effect among our group members. So, and then to strongly encourage them to collaborate with neighbors. And that's only the, one request from my side. And so in that way, they try to utilize our past knowledge. And once the former group members show the promise of that project and write a quite good paper, for most cases, that is the end of that project. But for the other people, because there is it is quite difficult to go beyond such a nice work. And but I try to keep going in the same direction once the former group member shows a promise of that, technology. So, but otherwise, there is no, control.
Yeah, I think I exert a similar lack of control over my group, as Nanshu and Daehyun could attest. But I would say, as academics, it's important to do some amount of kind of lunatic fringe type, research. I mean, that's the environment that we've been blessed to live in. But at the same time, you want to have impact, and you'd like to justify your research by developing applications that are meaningful and maybe a broader societal benefit. And so, we try to assemble some kind of blend that spans those two types of activities, not in a top-down control manner, but you end up with some kind of portfolio. And I would say for us, it's probably 2/3, 1/3. 2/3 where we kind of know what we're doing. We're trying to develop a technology that would satisfy a need if we were successful. And then the other third, we're tooling around with stuff we have no clue, but have a sense that maybe it's useful for something in the future. But anyway, I guess different groups are assembled in different ways. So it's interesting to hear your perspectives on that.
So in that sense, we never abandoned the opportunity of organic semiconductors. Although in organic semiconductor always looks so bright to us, but well, we are still working on the topics, and also another way of thinking is we try to improve the mechanical durability of new material. So, and then try to reduce the substrate thickness and going to the quite elastic substrate. And then finally, we succeeded in removing the supporting substrate entirely to reach the nanomesh electrode. So that's only electronic functional element remained on the skin. There is no substrate in some sense. Substrate is zero. Mm-hmm. But that looks like an ultimate, goal. And we are always thinking, so what should go beyond the zero substrate? So that's an interesting fundamental question. So there is no, goal beyond zero, but that's always open question. So
yeah, okay, great. Nanchu, you want to ask your question?
Yes, thanks, John. Thanks, Professor Someya, for super inspiring and comprehensive talk. It reminds me of many of your previous talks, where I get this inspiration for where the future is going. I don't know if you agree. So after listening to your talks, I realized that we are trying to make human more like a robot and making robot more like human. So we are trying to install e-skin and sensors to mimic human sensation, human skin, and then we're trying to digitize the human body and merge electronics and even actuators machines with human body. So I don't know, where do you see, whether you agree with this perspective?
Well, I'm very interested in kind of so you see the aging is a great big issues for Japanese community, but people are losing a lot of natural functions when the age increases. So but they have to be independent in some sense. So we are trying to utilize the soft electronics to so our intention is not to enhance the human capability, but once people lose some functions, so we want to, replace such kind of, natural functions coming back to the original level. So not the going up the, like Superman. So, so this is kind of philosophical, stuff, but for electronics, so we can just control everything. So this is original position and this is Superman, and but due to somehow ethical issues, so I have no hesitations to get the just recovery to the original, function, but I have some hesitation to try to make the new devices enhance the human's capability.
Thank you. Yeah, but we can enhance, for example, a worker or firefighter law enforcement capabilities, and they
Yes.
can rescue more lives. And
Yes.
yeah, and also we want to connect our body to the digital world. It's the internet of health and performance. So that's another piece. My mechanics question is regarding the nano mesh for the pressure sensor. So I'm curious about the reversibility of those nano mesh under, for example, stretching, in-plane deformation, as well as out-of-plane pressure. So we know the nanomesh could be stretchable, at least the gold nanomesh you demonstrated. I'm not sure about the pressure sensor, how stretchable it is. And the question is, after stretching, are we able to recover back to the original condition? And how are capacitance sensing affected by the stretching? And then when we apply like overloading, are we able to crash the nanomesh that they couldn't recover? I'm just curious.
Okay, so as you know, you are expert of mechanics. Gold itself is not the stretchable, and so in that sense, nanomesh, gold nanomesh is not so stretchable. So the stretchability is quite limited. However, there is many ways to improve the mechanical durability. So today I talk about the only nanomesh remaining on the skin. However, if we combine the polyurethane nanomesh and gold, so that exhibits the much better durability. So there are many ways to compromise all the requirements, but as you mentioned, reversibility or long-term stability is always the critical issue for all the stretchable devices.
Okay, thank you.
Just as a follow-up, Takao, so these capacitive mechanisms are very attractive for pressure sensing, and maybe the overall capacitance of your pressure sensors, it's high enough you don't have to worry about parasitics. But is that something that represents a source of noise? Just capacitance associated with the interconnect traces, other fringing fields, and so on, or is it negligible?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, so these capacitive type sensors, have a lot of attractive features, but in many cases, parasitic capacitance is associated with interconnect traces, other components of your overall system can add noise or cause drift. Do you find that to be a problem, or maybe the capacitance of your pressure sensors are high enough that you don't have to worry about it? It dominates. I don't know.
Well, parasitic capacitance is always a big problem. However, the more important issue is once we apply the pressure for some amount of time, and then such a soft material can deform completely, and that it doesn't come back to the original value. So such kind of fatigue and permanent deformation may substantially degrade the reliability. So this is the major issue for the capacitive type of soft pressure sensors. But as you mentioned, the parasitic capacitance have to be minimized. And also another issue is the change of dielectric constants near body. So water is quite a high dielectric, has dielectric constants. And then even though the wires covered by insulating layer to avoid the short circuit, but the sweat or water may change the transmission of signal. So there are a lot of uncertainty. So associated with the human electronics used near body.
Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, Xiaolei, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Professor John, and thank you, Professor Takao Someya. And I guess I must be the new face for you guys because I'm just a graduate student from Nanjing University, and my name is Wang Xiaolei. And I think the presentation you give tonight is impressive and fantastic. So I have one question about implantable devices. And we know some researchers mainly focus on their work about long-term stability. So they usually utilize special materials such as gold or polyamide to ensure its long-term stability. However, some researchers mainly focus on the biodegradability, which means their implantable devices can degrade in the human's body or in the environment gradually. So about these two abilities, which one do you think is more important for implantable devices?
So as far as the application of implantable devices are concerned, the biodegradability looks quite attractive. But for other application, the long-term stability have to be solved first, and then try to adapt the more advanced functions next. So this could be my way of thinking, but that's strongly depends on the target application. And well, I would say the biodegradability is quite important functions to argue the future of stretchable bioelectronics.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Takao. Next up is Ting Zhang. Would you like to ask your question?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Professor Someya, for the excellent talk. I have a question about the effect of water or moisture. You already briefly mentioned that I wanted to know your comments on the water moisture effect on the interface and also the performance of your sensor. Most specifically, you show that for the conformal device is very thin. We know that for very thin film, the wetting, the elastocapillary may play a role, like the water surface tension and also Laplace pressure due to the water bridge may be a large force at that scale. So it's possible to use that additional force as a design variable to optimize or to improve some performance of your sensor device. Thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't clearly catch the point of your question. Could you repeat again?
So my question is for very thin film, like
yes.
The surface tension of the droplet may deform your thin film. So if you have moisture at the interface between your device and the skin, you may form some small liquid bridge. And this small liquid bridge may deform your device, deform your substrate. How that mechanical force deformation will influence the performance of the device?
I never think about that kind of stuff in my research. However, all the semiconductor devices exhibit the fairly large change of performance by deformation. But by using the ultra thin film substrate, so we have to remove the such change of performance by deformation. But I didn't think about the deformation associated with water.
How about, Takao, just permeation of water or sensitivity to humidity in these ultra thin sort of polymer based devices? There's some finite water permeability to all these materials. Is that a consideration, or how do you think about that?
So that's also a good point. The organic devices exhibit the fairly large performance change under the presence of water or oxygen. So in that sense, the encapsulation is always very important. But the material used for the encapsulation is usually rigid. And then adding the good encapsulation layer may degrade the mechanical flexibility. So this is always the big challenge. But as far as the nanomesh or such single layer electrode are concerned, that have to be exposed to the outside, and there is no encapsulation in some sense. The semiconductor or other active element may need the good encapsulation, but electrode, well, should stay stably, and nanomesh looks fairly stable because that is just gold.
Yeah, good point. Okay, thank you. Ying Zhang, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Dr. Someya, it's a very impressive and inspiring presentation. Thank you very much for that. My name is Ying Zhong, and I am the second year junior faculty from University of South Florida. So in my lab, we recently developed a new printing technology which can print conformable sensors with a binder-free and ultra-fast way. And also it has a capability of being compatible with rotary manufacturing. So we are trying to develop the collaboration with industrial partners and also data scientists to push this technology forward. Since you have achieved a lot in the establishing a very good collaboration with those partners, I wonder, do you mind to give us some suggestions in how to establish a long-term and effective collaboration with different type of collaborators? I believe this your answer will be also very helpful for many audience here, since we have many junior researchers here. Thank you very much.
I think the we worked with more than 50 Japanese companies, but in the end, so we are seriously only 5 or 6 serious collaboration remain. So that may be 10% in some sense. I don't really know 10% is a good number or not. So also we have 2 startup company like Xenoma and Syntor. So 2 of them has already succeeded in commercialization of some small product. So in that sense, the making startup company looks quite efficient way for commercialization of emerging technology. However, once we try to think the quite big industrial impact in a short term, the collaboration with a big company might be reasonable. So we are working on both the making startup company and working with the quite big Japanese electronic companies. So we have not yet know the answer, what is the right thing to do. So, but well, we want to know the answer, to be honest. So
yeah, it's a tricky one and quite challenging. And I don't know if 10% is a good hit rate, but it sounds pretty good to me. I mean, you have to kiss a lot of frogs, I guess, is the point, to find a good match. And then, industry is very demanding. So their expectations are very high. So, if you want to cultivate those relationships, you really need to focus a lot of energy on them, and deliver, I guess, ultimately, would be, a key thing. Obviously, they don't have the same level of patience as NSF. Let's put it that way. Not even close. So it's a different exercise. Anyway, thank you for your question. So next up is Dibakar Datta. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Professor Someya. So you mentioned about the E-skin battery. Now in traditional battery, we have electrode, electrolyte, current collector. So I don't know how fundamentally E-skin battery is different from traditional batteries. Like what kind of material you use for electrode? Do you use electrolyte? And also I want a suggestion of how mechanician can contribute to E-skin battery design, because I work on batteries. So thank you.
Okay, the development of flexible battery looks quite attractive. So we sometimes buy the flexible battery to integrate with our stretchable sensors. However, we mainly use the just conventional rigid battery. So because the wireless power transmission needs the kind of conventional silicon tip in some sense. So once we use the some rigid element, so I think we can use the more rigid element. But when the sensor may establish the direct contact on skin, that part have to be stretchable and breathable. But other component may be okay to use the rigid. So this is the so a kind of a hybrid solution. But for long-term goal, of course, we want to make the everything by using the stretchable soft material, but that may takes the quite long way to go.
Also, I want to know, do you also use 2D material and the heterostructure for E-skin application, like like graphene, MOS2, Maxine?
Sorry, I couldn't catch the last word.
I mean, do you also use two-dimensional materials?
Two-dimensional material. Well, in the end, so any kind of soft material might be okay, but currently, so as far as the photonic application is concerned, the organic semiconductor can meet the almost all the requirement. So that includes the long-term stability and high efficiency, the availability from the vendor, and so we are pretty much satisfied with the organic semiconductor as far as some photodetector and light emitters are concerned. But of course, the other two-dimensional material can be used if that makes sense. So,
okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for those questions. Let me try to rephrase the first part of his question. I guess the first question, that is. And maybe it's along the lines of the following, which is, I'm a mechanical engineer. I want to get involved in this area more generally. What problems should I work on? Like, where are the challenges, from the standpoint of mechanics of materials? Can you identify two or three, areas that could benefit from, input from the mechanical engineering community, theory or experiment? Anything along those lines?
Well, I'm most interested in establishing the mechanically durable hybrid system. So this is, well, I don't really know how we can solve this problem, but this is the kind of most important goal. And also the reliability of a hybrid system is quite demanding, because we have to ensure there's some range of operating temperature. So once we use the different materials, and then many materials exhibit the different thermal expansion coefficient, and then the slight change of temperature may cause the delamination or maybe cracking. So that have to be avoided. So in that sense, once we use the different types of material with different material properties, it's super difficult to ensure the stability or mechanical durability.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you for that answer. So next up is Li-Ching Zhao.
Yes. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Professor, for giving us such very wonderful talk. I really enjoyed and learned a lot from your talk. I just following up the Jamie's question, and maybe also Lanchu also talk about that at the beginning. So you talk about the effect of cracks or water or moisture on your device. So I'm just curious about the detachment. You know, when we put your nano mesh device on our natural screen after some days or few days, then this device might get to the fatigue. Then sometimes we wrinkle the device, wrinkle the screen, and also wrinkle the device, right? So when we wrinkle the device, do you think it could generate the detachment between the device and the natural skin? So this detachment could also affect on your result or not. And also, you know, when we get the pressure from the device, do you think this kind of detachment is not acceptable, or it doesn't matter, couldn't affect the result? Thank you.
Okay, so detachment are also very important topics for nanomesh. So currently, we are just simply washing with scratching, like washing a hand, and then we can remove the nanomesh. However, the people are sweating, and then such sweat may cause the delamination of nanomesh. Well, we want to avoid that. So currently we are thinking to remove the nanomesh by without water, like clenching of cosmetic or others. So, but still, we want to. But more important thing is nanomesh is easy to attach if some technical staff can provide the appropriate support. But now we are proposing the nanomesh sensor is used for the senior people, so without any support of technicians. So that is actually a big or some sort of challenge. So we are thinking to put the nanomesh on some tape and may put on the skin and remove the some backside. So such kind of easy attachment of nanomesh or is needed rather than detachment. So when we remove the sensor, that is the end of the sensor. We don't use such sensor again. So we don't really care if that can be broken. But easy to attachment needs the lot of ideas.
Thank you, thank you. But I just wondering, you know, when we wrinkle the device, do you think it still stick to the natural skin or not? It will, the natural wrinkle.
Well, that exhibits the quite good conformability. However, the skin hair may be another issue. So for nanomesh, so perhaps we have to remove the hair to get the good, reliable contact.
I see. Do you think the very small detachment couldn't affect the result, or it could affect a lot?
We don't carefully look at the, contact area. So we usually use the approximately 1 by 1 square centimeters, and then quite hairy skin may have some problem, but for most Japanese people may looks okay, but it depends on the individuals. So that have to be carefully examined in the future if we try to increase the number of users.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
These are good questions, and you know, at the core, the answer is can be found in mechanical engineering analysis of the stresses at the interface between the devices and the skin. So if you assume the skin has some kind of sinusoidal roughness associated with a characteristic period and amplitude, and you think about generalized adhesion forces maybe dominated by van der Waals interactions between the device and the skin, then you can compute a threshold for the thickness and the modulus of the device that will lead to perfect conformality between those two structures. And then you can analyze the stresses that develop as the skin wrinkles and moves naturally. So it's a really rich problem in mechanical engineering. And Yonggang Huang, as a colleague here, did a deep theoretical analysis and developed scaling laws and so on. So for the mechanical engineers in the audience here, I think it's a really interesting topic area that can be attacked from the standpoint of theoretical mechanics. So it looks like we have 2 questions left, and I think we want to be respectful of your time, Takao. I know you're a busy guy as a dean these days, so we're just going to go through these last 2, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to skip over Zhigang. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because he's going to ask probably some really tough, intellectually deep question that's going to take some time to answer. Let me go with Rana first, and then Zhigang can back clean up and take us to the end. So Rana, you want to go first, and then we'll get to Zhigang right after.
Great. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to ask questions. So very fascinated talk, Professor Someya. I always love your work and read your paper, and also Professor Rogers' work. So I have a question related to biofouling of implantable devices, because if we want to make a long-term device, even for signal monitoring in brain, or even modulation, or checking cardiac function. So biofouling can be a very big issue for long-term use of those devices. I know there is a lot of strategies out how to make your device more robust, but still this challenge persists because each human being has different maybe chemicals in their bloods. So what is the solution or better solution which we can focus to make our devices long-term? And even if the device we wear on our skin, each individual have maybe different composition of sweat. So I mean, long-term use of that device can be a little challenging because signal can be different for different. So I just want to take your intake on that.
You are talking about the long-term stability for implantable devices, or am I correct?
So like major is implantable devices, and second also if we wear on our body, we have sometimes in summer, a huge amount of sweating, right? So that also has a lot of biochemicals which can, fool the device. So how we can make our devices more robust and we can avoid biofouling even in implantable devices or wearable devices.
So today I talk about the so different types of flexible, stretchable devices. So nanomesh itself is made of gold, and that exhibits the fairly good stability. So perhaps that may work even for the implantable devices. But the devices used in biofluid may require the good encapsulation. So I don't really know which encapsulation can be used for organic devices. So it's even tough for inorganic semiconductors. But currently, we are trying to compromise all the requirements, particularly for the on-skin, like the nanomesh used with the gold, reliable, and that is connected to the very tiny readout module, so that used on silicon-based rigid. So that may be manufactured on flexible circuit board, but that is not stretchable. So, but that is commercially available. And so that's kind of a compromised solution.
Great, thank you very much.
Great, thanks for your question, Rana. Okay, Jigang, you're up. Thanks for your patience.
Hey, John, so we're talking about skin electronics. There's no deep question. Every question has to be superficial. Skin electronics. All right. So, Takao, just amazing talk. You reviewed 20 years of effort, your own effort, but of course, remind effort by two other people in the audience, Siga Wagner and John Rogers. Right? All this group effort to do skin electronics. Now, so for years and years, because you guys work, we mechanics and materials people at a lower level focus on one issue and one issue only, make conductors stretchable. So by now we have zillions of various design strategies to make that happen. But today I hear something else. You keep referring to mechanical reliability. In your mind and in your practice, it's not just stretchable again. You want things to be breathable. Air need to go in and out, maybe water. And then you also say, I want things can be rubbed. So here's the thing. Now, in mechanics and materials, there are actually quite a serious effort ongoing. People are publishing, so we review papers. We also have paper in submission. The material, basic material properties, this class of material will have amazing properties. You've probably already seen from published. Of course, most of these materials don't really get to be used at this moment. So the question to you really is, in addition to stretchability, what are other things we actually in developing materials should do? And so that we can measure it, because the things you don't measure and it will not be developed. You can only see at a system level. So you already provide some examples as breathability and maybe rubbing. So for example, your nano mesh gold probably cannot be rubbed. Is that true?
Well, our first generation of nano mesh may get damaged when we perform the rubbing, but now our new nano mesh exhibits the amazing durability. Even rubbing doesn't cause any problem. So otherwise, we cannot establish the good interconnection by physical contact. So there is some reliability issues, but I'm quite confident that the nanomesh durability can be improved significantly.
Yeah, and then about a more general question, your advice to people at working at a more basic level of mechanics materials. So in additional stretchability, what other things we need to learn from system level people in developing materials?
I would say now single point detection can be demonstrated by many research groups, but it is not so easy to perform the multimodal, multi-position sensing. And particularly for the long-term data collection is not so easy. Even though the people use the gel electrode, the continuous monitoring with gel over maybe 2 days start causing a lot of redness, itchiness, and irritation. But if people or scientists may have patience, so they claim, so we did the long-term monitoring, but in actual, experiment may cause a lot of problem. So long-term monitoring and multimodal, multi-position sensing will be the natural way for us to go. So, but that is kind of system level problem. But if we look at the fundamental stuff, as I mentioned the past history of our development. So we begin with the glass substrate and plastic substrate going to thin and elastomer, and we are working on the gel electrode. Although I have no time to mention the latest progress of gel electronics. So the biological tissue may use everything like the liquid and the soft material like gel. So I'm quite interested in how the integrated system can use the liquid or maybe some of the mixture of gel and liquid. So in that way, we can improve the quality of interface between electronics and biological tissue. But that's maybe interesting, open question, so that we should continue discussing in the future.
Thank you.
John, may I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Please.
I think the biggest mechanical problem is a stretchable permeation barrier. I think will be a composite materials with rigid plates sliding against each other in some way. So that's it. Just I wanted to mention because you asked for mechanical problems.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's a great concept. We're looking at that as well, Sigurd, and I think it connects back to Divakar's question around the role of 2D materials. Those plates could be mexines, for example, as a basis of composites. But anyway, this has been a great discussion. I think we've had you almost for 3 hours now, Takao, and I know your time is very precious, and we appreciate your willingness to participate in this webinar. Thanks to all the panelists for a great discussion, great presentation, Takao. If there are any final words, people can offer them now. Otherwise, I think it's a good time to conclude this webinar and thank everyone for their participation.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Takao. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Takao. Thanks very much. I really enjoyed it.
Jimmy, you have something to say?
You're muted.
Jimmy, you're muted.
Can I just share one slide to announce the next? So here's the announcement of the next EML webinar on Wednesday, September the 15th, featuring what we call the Barcelona duet. So Xavier Chapet and Marino Ariro will give a presentation, two of them together. The discussion leader would be Andrea Cosmoli at Princeton. Okay, I hope to see all of you on September the 15th. That will start at our regular webinar time at 10 a.m. US Eastern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Takao. Brilliant talk.